Hi, this is David again, and this is going to be part 3 of the basis of game theory. We'll be doing a little bit of review again of the things that we learned in the first 2 parts, but what this video is primarily going to be on is explaining the difference between exploitative and optimal play and when to use each. Now, what we're going to first do is return to the same little game that we've been using for demonstration purposes. And this is the game where player 1 is dealt one of these 4 cards at random, and player 2 is always dealt a jack. Okay? And the high card is going to win in this game. Each player antes $1. Player 1 has the option of betting $2 at the pot after he receives his card, or he can simply fold. And player 2 has only 2 options. He can either call the bet, or he can fold. Now, we showed before that although this is an even game, the bettor has the advantage because he can choose a strategy which guarantees him a profit against player 2. The way to do that is to play optimally, bet optimally. And when you're betting optimally, what you should do is you should make your ratio of value bets to bluffs exactly the same as the pot odds you offer your opponent. When you bet $2 into a $2 pot, or anytime you bet, make a pot-sized bet in a poker game, you're offering your opponent 2 to 1 to call. He has to call $2 to win $4, so he's getting 2 to 1 on his money. So therefore, our ratio of value bets to bluffs should also be 2 to 1. Okay, if we should bet the queens every time we get them, because that's the nuts, essentially. But when we get a 10, we're bluffing, and if we're betting 50 times per 100 with the queens, we should only bet 25 times per 100 with the 10s. Half the time when we get a 10, we will throw it away. The other half of the time, we will bet. And we showed that this guarantees us a profit, regardless of the opponent's strategy. In 100 hands, if he calls every time, we will make 50 value bets and win $4 each time, since he's always calling. That's $200. We're making 25 bluffs and losing all of them, so we'll be losing $50 on bluff, which leaves us a net of $150 per 100 hands. And after we take out our ante expense, which was $1 a hand, $100, we come out $50 ahead per 100 hands. And we make the exact same amount if player 2 always folds. We don't make as much on our value bets. All we'll be doing is picking up the antes. But we do that 50 times and we make $100. And now our bluffs are making money. We bluff 25 times. If he folds every time, we pick those up every time. That's $150. And again, we make $150 net per 100 hands, just as we did above, which is a $50 profit after our ante expense. So when we have no read on the opponent, or we think that he can exploit us, we do best by playing optimally, and we can guarantee ourselves that profit. However, that is not always the most profitable way to play poker. Suppose you believe that player 2 is a weak player or a very readable player. You make more money not by playing optimally, but by playing exploitatively. Suppose he's a calling station and he calls way more than the optimal. Okay, in that case, you obviously do not maximize your profit by bluffing 50% of the time when you have the 10s. You would actually maximize your profit by never bluffing. You would make only value bets. Okay, so against this player, if you make only value bets and we fold every time you got the 10s, what would happen is 50 times out of 100, you would be betting $2 at the pot. He would be calling every time. So in every one of these bets, you would make $4. You would make $4 50 times per 100. That's $200. And you would just be folding your 10s. So you'd be making $200 per 100 hands instead of only $150. And when we take out the expense for antes, which is $1 a hand, you'd be making $100 per 100, which is twice as much as you get by optimal play, simply because he's a calling station and you're exploiting him by never bluffing. Now, in truth, what you should do, that's how you would play if this were in a vacuum. But in truth, the best way to exploit your opponent, if it's the real world, is to exploit him to the maximum extent possible without causing a change in his behavior. If we were playing this game and you never ever bluffed, player 2 would catch on to it. okay, and he would actually start folding, so you wouldn't win much. So what you would do is you would still bluff much less frequently than optimal, but you would still bluff once in a while just to keep a doubt in his mind and keep him calling. Okay, so instead of betting every time that you got a 10, of hearts, maybe you would fold it half the time and bet half the time. Or you may even bluff less than that. But what I'm saying is that you would bluff far less than optimal against the calling station, and in that way you'll win more than you would against a better player. Now, suppose on the other hand he was a folder. He folded much too frequently. Okay, in that case, again, you're not going to bluff optimally. Okay, you're going to bluff more frequently. If we looked at this in a vacuum, again, your optimal strategy would be to bet every single time. Okay, now what happens if you bet every single time and he folds every single time? Well, in 100 bets, you'll be making value bets and bluffs, but every single time you will pick up the $2 pot. You will make $200 per 100 hands, just as we did against the guy who was always calling, because you're maximizing your profit by exploiting him fully. Okay, but again, he would notice that you're betting every single time. So what you would do to mix it up and make sure that he didn't change his strategy is that you would bluff more frequently than optimally, but not 100% of the time. Okay, like perhaps every third or every fourth time that you got a 10, you would just throw it away. What you want to do when you're exploiting an opponent is exploit him again to the maximum degree possible without causing him to change behavior. Doyle Brunson wrote something similar in one of his books on it when you're exploiting an opponent. He says, hit him again, and then throw the dog a bone. And what happens if you don't ever throw the dog a bone? Eventually, he'll start playing back at you or alter his strategy, and at that point, you've turned him into a better player. So what you want to do is hit him to the maximum degree possible without causing him to change. Now, let's talk about when we have the jack and we're on the defense. The same thing holds true. If this were a very good player and we were concerned about him exploiting us, we would use the optimal defensive strategy. And the optimal defensive strategy is to look and see what price your opponent is getting on the bluff, how frequently he needs us to fold, and call that exact amount. So he's betting $2 to win $2. He's getting 1-to-1 on his money, so he needs us to fold more than 50% of the time. What we do to play optimally against this opponent, if we're afraid of being exploited, is call exactly 50% of the time. He's right at the break-even threshold. He can't make any money. Okay? If he bluffs every time, he's only going to win half the time because we're only calling half the time. Half the time he loses his $2, and half of the time he picks up the $2 pot. And then on the when he's making the value bets, we're only calling half the time. He's coming out $150 ahead for 100, the same as if he bluffed optimally. Now, what we're going to do if we think this is not a good player is we're going to make reads on him. If we think he is bluffing more than the optimal amount, we maximize our expectation by calling 100% of the time. We will call every single time he bets. On the other hand, if he never bluffs, we will maximize our expectation by never calling. Okay? Now, again, these things are vacuum, but that's how it works theoretically. What you're going to do, suppose we think he never bluffs. Against an optimal opponent, we would be calling 50% of the time. Theoretically, against him, we should never call. But what we should really do to keep him from changing his behavior is call every third or fourth time, something like that, so we can exploit him without causing him to change. Okay, that's it for now. Part 4 will go over preemptive strategy, using the optimal defense to construct ranges.